Right now, before you clicked on this video, you probably thought this looks interesting and decided to watch it. But have you ever wondered whether ancient humans had that same inner voice guiding their thoughts and decisions? If they did, maybe one of their thoughts sounded something like, "That deer looks like it could make a pretty good dinner." Some people might say, of course they had an inner voice. They were humans just like us. But someone else might argue, sure, they had thoughts, but before language, what were they supposed to think in? Caveman subtitles? Nowadays, we talk to ourselves more than we realize. When you're out shopping and see a car run a red light, you might think, wow, they need to slow down. Or when you're reading a book, you might silently hear the words in your mind without saying them aloud. The question gets more fascinating the more you think about it. But before we dive in, we need to go back in time to when language was first emerging. Imagine yourself in a time before humans had developed language as we know it. You communicated with your hunter-gatherer group using grunts and sighs. If you wanted to alert them about a lion in the distance, you might let out a loud, sharp whistle to grab their attention before pointing toward the animal. If you were tired from chasing prey, you would likely just let out a sigh. In 1861, historical linguist Max Muller published a list of theories that ignited some interest in this mystery. I think Muller's most reasonable theory is the poo-poo theory. It offers an interesting example of how humans might have developed language. The poo-poo theory suggests that some early words may have come from emotional expressions triggered by strong feelings like pain, pleasure, or surprise. Fast forward to 1930 when Sir Richard Paget introduced the ta-ta theory regarding the origins of language. This theory suggests that humans might have created some of their earliest words by using tongue movements that mimicked hand gestures. This made certain sounds meaningful, which could have helped shape language. While there is no direct archaeological evidence for the origins of language, these theories provide some historical ideas about how language could have been formed. If there was a time when language didn't exist, it raises the question of whether humans could think without spoken words. This leads us to another question. Could language have played a role in shaping our thoughts, ultimately resulting in the development of an internal monologue, often referred to as an inner voice? Language has a great influence on human thinking. For example, we humans could label items and plan ideas with language, which really changed the way we thought after we developed language. This is shown by the Sapir-Whorf theory. There are two versions of this theory: linguistic relativity and linguistic determinism. Linguistic relativity proposes that language slightly influences the way we perceive our world, but linguistic determinism suggests that language heavily limits the way we experience the world around us. Among these two hypotheses, linguistic relativity is more well known. There are proven experiments based on this. For example, in 2007, a researcher tested this theory by asking Russian and English-speaking people to distinguish between two different shades of blue. Before I continue, you should have a go at guessing which group distinguished them quicker. Okay, time to reveal. It was the Russian speakers because in Russian, the language has two completely different words for light blue and blue. Did you see how in English I said blue twice? In Russian, the words are completely different and don't repeat blue when differentiating between them. In case you were wondering how you say it in Russian, light blue is goluboy and blue is sini. There was also another study conducted in 1997 where Gugu-Yimithir and Dutch speakers were asked to recall the position of objects after turning around. The study showed that Gugu-Yimithir speakers recalled the objects using the exact direction they were originally placed in, while Dutch speakers tended to use directions based on their own perspective. Linguistic anthropologists suggest this may be because in English we use left and right for our directions, but in Gugu-Yimithir, speakers commonly use the Earth's cardinal directions, which are north, east, west, and south. These studies provide evidence that language can influence certain aspects of how we think and perceive the world. So, did ancient humans actually have inner thoughts before language? Well, thinking is not the same as having an inner voice, and it doesn't necessarily require language. The human mind can think through diagrams, images, memories, and emotions. Like I said earlier, linguistic relativity doesn't limit how you think. It influences how you think. For example, you can picture a yellow banana in your mind without having to mentally say yellow banana. This is illustrated by the dual coding theory. Dual coding theory is a theory of cognition that proposes that the mind processes information through two distinct channels, verbal and nonverbal. It was first hypothesized by Alan Pavio in the late 1960s. The fundamental building blocks of the nonverbal system are called imagines. Auditory imagines are associated with mentally experiencing specific sounds. For example, You can think of a dog barking in your mind without actually saying that the dog is barking in your language. Visual images are responsible for the mental image you experience. For example, you can think of the blue sky and see the blue sky in your mind without actually saying the words blue sky. Haptic images are responsible for the textures or temperatures you mentally experience. For example, you can imagine how sandpaper feels or how it feels to put your hand under cold tap water. This demonstrates how you can experience complex thoughts without mentally stating the thought in language, suggesting that ancient humans could potentially have had complex thoughts without language. Now, we can all agree that ancient humans had impressive cognitive abilities. If they weren't intelligent, they wouldn't have been able to create spears and tools to survive. But complex thinking is not the same as having an inner voice. Archaeological evidence can show things like planning, tool-making, cooperation, and art, but none of these reveals their main form of thinking. It's important to remember that thoughts do not leave behind any evidence. We cannot determine if they had thoughts that sounded like sentences, though they could have had thoughts involving sensations and images, as mentioned earlier, with the help of their imagens. So, did ancient humans have inner voices? Well, before language, they obviously didn't. And we still can't confirm they had inner voices after language. There must have been a time when they developed and resulted in the inner voices we experience today, but we simply can't determine that because they don't leave behind fossils. Maybe the strangest part isn't about inner voices. It's about what it must have felt like before words existed in your mind. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and peace out.